so much that, in an attempt to justify the butchery, the Donnellys were painted as an evil family that simply received its comeuppance at the hands of an exasperated township. That they were murdered was unfortunate, yes, it was said, but those who killed them simply had no choice. The position of the community was that they were driven to commit the deed in an effort to save their farms, their town, and their lives from a rabid family that was hell-bent on destroying all of this. Even the matriarch of the family had to be scented out as being extraordinarily evil. This was necessary as the killing of women and children was particularly frowned upon from an ethical perspective, and so the rumor was spread that the mother of the family was deranged and insisted that each of her children had to kill a man. This, with few exceptions, has been the tale that has been passed down to Canadians over the generations. As one now knows, it has turned out to be a myth, and consequently the township, and those in proximity to it, later thought it best not to talk of the matter at all. All of Lucan, London, and Middlesex County became silent, and even the offspring of the Vigilance Committee members could recall no mention ever being made within their respective homes of the Donnellys, nor of their relatives' role in what was once the biggest news story in the Dominion. It was thought the matter might go away if it was never mentioned, and yet 141 years later, the tale endures. By contrast, outside of Middlesex County, the version of the story put forth by the Vigilance Committee never passed muster, and in those areas of the country that didn't depend upon the freedom of 20 to 40 men for its success in commerce, tithing, and survival, the killers received no such support or loyalty. Indeed, the bulk of Canada's sympathy landed on the side of the murdered family. Even a cursory inspection of the facts makes it clear that in the background of the drama, pulling the strings were wealthy business and political interests that wanted the Donnellys gone by any means necessary. And then, as now, all the villagers followed the golden rule of power, i.e. those who had the gold made the rules. The Stanley brothers of Lucan certainly had the most gold, and opposed any person or family that didn't fall in line with their wishes. And when a Catholic family, particularly one that had a satirist such as William Donnelly at its helm, was only too happy to publicly remind the Stanleys of their own crimes, the higher-ups had to take steps to ensure that such uppity farmers were put in their place, and so it was done. I must confess that, as I began my research into the story, I half expected to discover that the Donnelly brothers had gone on a murderous rampage to avenge the deaths of their family members, that they would have burned down Ma's farm, where James Carroll and his brother were living, or that Carroll himself would have mysteriously disappeared, instead of living in town for a while longer, then moving out west where he would live into his 60s. But no such thing ever occurred, and the reason, simply, is that the Donnellys were not the fiends their enemies made them out to be. Murder simply wasn't their way. There is no evidence that they killed anybody during their wild and woolly youth, and so there was no intrinsic impulse for them to kill afterwards. As before the murders, the Donnellys always settled their problems in the streets, a la John Donnelly's fistfight with Constable Hodgins, or Bob Donnelly's later attempts to draw James Carroll into a fight, or in the courts, under the stewardship of William Donnelly. And that was the way they decided to combat the grievous deaths of their beloved family members after the horrendous night of February 4th, 1880. John Little, Bracebridge, Ontario, 2021. Chapter 17. The Massacre. The skis of the horse-drawn sleigh cut deep grooves in the snow as James and Tom Donnelly, together with young Johnny O'Connor, travelled northward along the Roman line. It was still light outside, but the darkness was closing in quickly. Eventually Tom slowed the team to turn into the laneway of the Donnelly home, and brought the horses to a stop beside the house. James Donnelly and Johnny O'Connor stepped down from the sleigh and hurried inside the house to warm up. Tom stayed outside, where he was soon joined by his brother John, and the pair detached the horses from their harnesses and walked them behind the farmhouse and into the stable. It was, O'Connor would later recall, a very cold night. After securing and sheltering the horses, Tom and John hurried back to the warmth of the farmhouse.